I've been told that this happens from time to time, but this was the first time I had experienced it, and I hope it was the last. I'm a patrol cop in New Hope, Pennsylvania. I was top of my class, and my rookie year was one of the best on record, not to brag or anything. I say that because as a result of this, towards the end of my rookie year, I was the first rookie to get my own patrol car. New Hope is a small town, and the crime rate is low, so my sergeant trusted that I would be okay on my own for a few shifts, just to test it out. I was working an overnight, typical for rookies. I was sitting in my car, drinking a fresh coffee from Dunkin' when I got a call. I was sent to a nearby house for a DV call. I headed to the house, arriving in just a few minutes. It was a modest 2-story house in a dark cul-de-sac. I didn't see a car in the driveway. I figured the owners either parked in the garage or didn't own one. I hopped out of my car and cautiously walked to the front door, swinging my flashlight as I went. The cul-de-sac was silent, not quiet, totally silent. Granted, it was 3 a.m., but it was still kind of eerie. I knocked on the front door and announced myself. I didn't hear anything from inside the home. I knocked again, wincing internally as the sound echoed through the sleeping neighborhood. I reached for my radio, letting dispatch know that no one was answering the door and asking them to confirm the address. I was at the right place. I tried the doorknob, growing concerned and wondering if I had arrived too late. The doorknob didn't give, and when I turned my flashlight to it, I saw a lock on the knob. The kind you'd see on a home for rent, with the keys and a lockbox. Was it possible the home wasn't even occupied? I took a step back. I thought that maybe it was a prank call. That happens sometimes. I took one more look over the property and got back into my car. I reached out to dispatch, letting them know that the house wasn't occupied, and as I did so, I glanced at the house once more. I could have sworn I saw a curtain move. I stared at that window for a while, and decided it was probably my imagination. I left the cul-de-sac and finished my shift. Back at the station, I sent a few quick texts before heading out. Thinking back to that call, I decided to search the address on Google. The first few search results were from websites like Zillow. It seemed that the home was for sale. On my way out, I stopped by the front desk to ask my buddy Tom about the call. I showed him a picture of the house from the search results, along with the address. Tom grinned and said, "You got the Murphy House call. First of the year, I think." I asked what he meant by that, growing annoyed as he chuckled. Tom proceeded to tell me that the Murphy House, as it's known by the cops in this town, was the site of a murder about 8 years ago. A woman killed her husband after the discovery of his affair. The man locked himself in their bedroom and desperately called 911 after being stabbed 12 times, but died before anyone could reach him. The house has been on the market since, and a few times a year, a call for help is made that always traces back to that address. It suddenly made sense why they'd send the rookie in for that call. I made it out slightly confused, and maybe a little bit spooked, but not every experience is the same. Some rookies have reported seeing a man's face in a window on the second floor. Others have reported speaking to someone through the locked door. I'm grateful that whatever spirits may inhabit the home now decided to take it easy on me that night. I hope I'm never called back to that cul-de-sac. I have no interest in speaking with the dead. I'm a police officer working in an emergency response team in a busy London borough. We took a call to a suspected domestic incident in a block of flats. The informant said that she could hear screaming and sounds of disturbance coming from the flat above her own. Once we arrived, my colleague and I knocked on the door to the flat that the informant said the sound was coming from. I couldn't hear any disturbance coming from the address. To be honest, I heard nothing at all. After knocking twice, we got no response. My colleague left to go downstairs and speak directly to the informant. I stayed by the door and knocked again, and after some time it was finally answered by an elderly woman. She had clearly been asleep and was alarmed to see me standing outside. I told her that someone had called saying that they could hear a disturbance coming from within her address. I asked her if there was anyone else inside with her. She looked bemused and told me that she lived alone and had been sleeping. I asked her if I could come in to satisfy myself that no one else was inside. She invited me in, and I walked into what was a small 2-bedroom flat. The flat was in darkness, apart from her hall light and her bedside lamp. I began searching through the flat. As I approached the final door, my colleague called on the radio. He told me he was on his way and asked if I was okay. I told him everything was fine, wondering why he sounded so flustered. He told me he was with the informant and could also hear screaming and loud thuds coming from the flat I was in. I told him that he must be mistaken, as I was almost done searching the flat, and I had heard nothing whatsoever. I have to admit a feeling of unease as I opened the final door. Like all of the other rooms, it was in darkness, but it was freezing cold. There was no one in the room, no signs of disturbance, no window was open. I called my colleague and asked him to listen out for my footfall. He said he could hear my feet as I stomped, but said that the screaming had stopped. This coincided with me opening the door. I left shortly after, apologizing to the elderly woman for waking her. I have no rational explanation for this at all. My colleague and I left feeling very creeped out. About 4 years ago, a lady who I'll call Kate called our non-emergency line and said that she locked herself out of her house. I arrived first and immediately noticed a burning candle and some Jesus statues in the upstairs window. The light in this room was also on. I can't explain it, but it did seem a bit odd to me. As I approached Kate, who appeared to be about 65 years old, and asked what happened, she said that she had walked out to her car to get her groceries for her and her mother, but she forgot her keys inside, and the door had locked behind her. I asked if her mother was home, and Kate replied in the affirmative. Kate went on to say that she technically lived alone, because her mom had died 6 years prior, but she still lives with her in the bedroom with the lit candle, and she makes her presence known by turning the lights on and off, opening and closing doors, and turning on the bathroom faucet. I then walked the perimeter of the home and found an unlocked window into the kitchen. Since Kate never actually left home and knew that no one else was inside, I radioed dispatch and climbed through the window with her consent. As my boots touched the kitchen floor, I heard an audible click. At the same time, the lights in the stairway and upstairs hallway to my left turned off. I quickly walked to the rear sliding door to my right and advised Kate on what had happened. Kate laughed and said that was just her mother saying hello. I told Kate that although I genuinely believed what she told me was true, I still had to do my due diligence and ensure that no one else was inside. I radioed for backup, and within minutes my buddy arrived. The first thing he asked was about the lit candle in the window. While clearing upstairs, we came upon the room where the candle was and immediately noticed it was blown out. There were no open windows, fans, vents, or other obvious source that could have extinguished the flame. We just looked at each other with a bit of unease and went back downstairs to leave. The upstairs light turned off behind us. We talked to Kate for another 5 minutes and suggested getting a battery-operated candle, just to be safe. Well, Kate clearly did not listen, because to this day, That candle burns in the open window most nights when I drive by. And every now and then, I'll stop to talk to Kate and see how she and her mother are doing. I have wanted to share this story and a few others for a while. To this day, this remains the scariest thing I have ever experienced, and I really hope it serves as a cautionary tale to young ladies who make solo road trips. Day or night, no one is safer than the other. Please remember that. A little backstory. From 1996 to 1999, I made close to weekly trips from my home in Vegas to Venice Beach on an arrangement made to facilitate visitation of my daughter with her father, with whom I have a violent past as a domestic violence survivor. I did the drive to avoid him being in my space, as he had stalked me before. As I'm approaching the Nevada-California border, I exit the freeway to stop at my daughter's favorite rest stop. This night was foggy and very dark, but the gas station was well lit. Deciding to top off gas after using the bathroom and getting snacks, I had pulled to a pump close to the door of the store. That night, we were the only customers inside the rest stop, but once we got outside, there was another car pumping gas at the pump furthest from mine. I was busy putting my daughter back into her car seat and getting her blanket and snack just right before the next 3 hours on the road. My head was down, so the man at the other pump was not in my field of vision, but I could feel eyes burning into my back. Never before since have the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stood up while my pulse raced for no evident reason. As dread radiated and my ears even buzzed in alarm, my head snapped up and I involuntarily spun around in a primal assessment of threat. That's when I saw a face on the creepy man, an expression of pure, unprovoked hatred toward me. A total stranger. Brows knitted, eyes squinting and scarily staring at me. A look that said he was desecrating and savagely violating me in his mind. I lost my breath, I was so spooked. I finished pumping quickly and jumped into that car, dramatically locking all 4 doors, and left. It took a few minutes to calm myself down and stop shaking. After a while, I put it behind me, telling myself he must have thought I was someone else. Around 30 miles down the 15, a car pulls behind me and a red light flashes, along with a loud horn. I assumed I was being pulled over for speeding. I pulled to the shoulder and waited for the officer to approach my window. I knew not to stare at cops. My eyes were straight forward. My daughter was sleeping in the back. The windows were still rolled up. I decided to roll them down once he got to my car. Then I looked over to my side mirror. It was so dark. All I could see was a guy standing there, his head anxiously swiveling, like he didn't want any cars around to see him. Then I noticed the badge, but not on his chest, on his jeans. It was clipped onto his waistband. Then, the stare. And fear shakes my gut for the second time in less than an hour. It was the gas station guy. Survival instinct roared into action. Details about this encounter were alarming me, and I was again choked up and shaking like mad. My heart was racing. All of a sudden, I felt something in me whisper, then loudly demand that I get away. As if my body was following silent commands, I turned the key, shifted into first, and slammed onto the gas, spraying gravel in my wake. I was driving 90 miles an hour. I decided if he really was a cop, I'd give him the chance to follow me to the next police station. The next thing I knew, the car was passing me. I saw a red siren light, like the kind they used to sell at Spencer's Gifts, attached to the top of the car. I actually laughed at how ridiculous his show was up close. Then I got pissed. This guy had seen my baby with me at the gas station. He knew an innocent child was in the car with me. and he still chose me as a target.